Hello. It has been over a year since I first launched the channel Jordan Sorcery, and what a marvellous and magical time it has been. I've been able to delve into the history of some of the games that mean the most to me. I've met some of my absolute hobby heroes. I've actually started documenting my most ambitious hobby project ever. And I've even told some small stories set in these worlds that I love. And thankfully, even though I have made some mistakes, over 11,000 of you have joined me along the way. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today we're going to talk a little bit about things I got wrong, and a lot about the next couple of things I'm going to try and get right. If you have been following the channel for a while, then you may remember that I made an addendum video, where I looked back at the videos I had made up to a certain point around the start of this year, and exposed all of the errors and mistakes that I had made so far. At the time, that was relatively manageable. I'd only made a small number of videos, and I could go back through them and just with a fine-tooth comb, call out the things I got wrong or that I missed. Nowadays, well, that would probably be the only video I could make for an entire month, because it has been a big year. And that's not because I've made more mistakes this year, at least I hope not, but because I've made so much more content. As well as interviews and book clubs and shorts, I've also made more than 30 separate history videos, each one looking in detail at a given system or set of games, and they can cover many, many years of development. And unfortunately, despite my best efforts in the research and the writing and the production of those videos, sometimes errors do slip through. Now, that is obviously very embarrassing for me. I don't want to make any mistakes, and I don't want to mislead anybody, and I want to make sure that I'm crediting the right people and talking about the right things and getting the details right, because that's the whole point of this channel. I want to talk about the true history, or at least as much of the true history as I can find. So when I make these mistakes, I put corrections in the description, but it still feels not great to have errors that are out there just in the wind. And that is why I have made this addendum. I'm going to be taking a look at some of the biggest errors, or the most embarrassing errors, I guess, and talking through the top 5 that I've identified. Now, yeah, so these are embarrassing. They're mistakes, so it's embarrassing. So if I have any viewers left at the end of this top 5 list, then I'm going to talk about what I've got coming up for year 2 of Jordan Sorcery. Where do we go next? What videos am I working on? And what cool stuff am I going to be sharing over the Christmas period? Oh, and before you watch the list of mistakes, why not consider giving this video a like? And if you haven't done so, subscribing to the channel. Basically, it's the only way I'll learn. Okay, error number 5 is a relatively minor one, but it's so recent and just so basically wrong that I feel like it's worth calling out. In my video about the history of Judge Dredd at the gaming table, I talk about the original Judge Dredd board game designed by Ian Livingstone and featuring art by 2000 AD legends Brian Bolland and Ian Gibson. In the video, I somehow mixed the two up and attributed the map art to the wrong artist. So, to clarify, the amazing board art for Judge Dredd, the game of crime fighting in Mega City 1, was by Ian Gibson. The cover art for the box was by Brian Bolland. Hopefully, that sets the record straight and keeps the street judges off my back. This is another one where I feel like at some point I did have the correct information in my brain or in my research, but somehow I mixed things up in the writing or the production or whatever. But enough excuses. In The Making of Warhammer Fantasy Part 2, where I'm actually covering the 3rd edition of the game, I talk about the Warhammer Siege Book, a supplement designed for use with Warhammer Fantasy and 40k that would help you simulate siege warfare and create some themed scenarios. Alongside the Siege Book, there was also an incredible piece of terrain. Games Workshop released the Mighty Fortress in 1988, a huge castle with multiple towers and wall sections and a gate as well. In the video, I mistakenly referred to the fortress as being made out of plastic. Of course, I have mixed it up there with the Warhammer Fortress that would come out almost a decade later, which had a similar visual design and was made out of plastic. The original Mighty Fortress, though, was actually made of polystyrene, and was apparently going to be the first in a series of styrene terrain features, but it ended up being the only one that got released. Though I should note that GW did later produce other hard foam terrain kits like the Dwarf Stronghold. There's no denying it, I made a right pig styrene of that one. It's not even a phrase, I was just desperate for a joke. This is actually a fun one, less of a mistake and more incomplete information, I guess. You'll probably know that this year I have become inspired by and enamoured of the Warhammer port city of Marburg. I've done a lore video about it, sort of a travel video where you're given a tour by a halfling guide, as well as my army diary and a video about the history of the creation of the city. In that video, I proposed a theory as to the origin of Marburg's name, that it may have been inspired by Europe's biggest castle, a place in Poland called Marburg that was known to the Teutonic Knights as Marienburg in honour of the Virgin Mary. In a moment that was very cool for me, Rick Priestley himself actually left a comment on that video and explained the true origin of the name Marienburg. Marienburg in the Wasteland was the name for the roleplay skirmish setting that Richard Halliwell adopted following a trip out to Amsterdam in the late 70s with his then girlfriend Marion. Marienburg is named after Marion. When Hal started to write stuff for Warhammer, he brought the setting with him. I don't recall there being much to it other than the broad theme and the fact it was surrounded by wastes of possibly post-nuclear devastation. During the process of building the Warhammer world, Marienburg kinda came along. So there you go, Richard Hal Halliwell created Marienburg based on his time in Amsterdam and inspired by the name of his partner. Rick Priestley and other writers then canonized that city into the Warhammer setting over the years. And I think it's very cool that the city has a history so rich that it even predates Warhammer itself. Okay, so this one takes the number 2 spot because I really should have known better. I remember the events of this very clearly in real life back in the 90s, and yet somehow I still got it wrong. I made a video about the origins of Space Crusade, and in it I talk about some of the evil creatures that you fight and where else you might find them in the 41st millennium. One such baddie is the Chaos Android, a clear riff on the Terminator, but explained as being the creation of Chaos Squats. These cheeky metal chappies would of course go on to reappear in 40k proper, not as creations of Chaos, but as a fully fledged force of robotic terrors, the Necrons. In the video, I suggested that the Necrons make an early first appearance in the 3rd edition core rulebook amongst a selection of dangerous Xenos from across the galaxy. Whilst that is sort of true, it's not really their first appearance. That actually came some months earlier in White Dwarf 217, which detailed these new Necron raiders, their warriors, and their scouting scarabs. There was actually a free metal Necron included with the issue, and if you were lucky enough, in store, you could even win an Imperial containment table with a half-dissected scarab in stasis upon it. And for completion's sake, I will also mention that there was actually a teaser for the arrival of the Necrontyr in the previous issue of White Dwarf, where a communication from an Imperial exploratory team hints at their impending arrival. Of course, when I made this video and made this error, I should have known that they'd be back. And here we are, the biggest and most embarrassing mistake that I've made on the channel this year is probably the one in my Star Trek history video. So I made a video talking all about the history of Star Trek role-playing games, and some of that includes a bit of Games Workshop stuff, but many other companies have had their hands in the Star Trek license over the years, and it was really complex, covers a lot of different creative teams and companies and games and systems. I'm really proud of this as a video overall, because I managed to condense so much information into such a short video, but because of that, I did overlook a couple of things and make a couple of mistakes, and they don't result in credit going to the right people. So I do want to make a correction so that it's clear who did what. In 1998, Last Unicorn Games were able to unravel the complex legal mess of licenses and release a new Star Trek RPG, one that used a new rule system called the Icon System. Inexcusably, I mistakenly attributed the creation of that Icon System to Rob Isaacs, when in fact it was created by Ross Isaacs, a typo that is both annoying and misleading. But that is not the worst naming mix-up that I made in the video. No, I spent an entire 30 minutes referring to the company that developed the Starfleet gaming universe by the wrong name. Instead of the Amarillo Design Bureau, I repeatedly call them the Armadillo Design Bureau. This is a mistake that makes me physically cringe so hard I can dislocate both of my shoulders. I'm horrified by this error, and I apologize to everybody at ADB, I apologize to the fans, and to everybody who watched the video, and the whole world, basically. I'm sorry. Really, really bad. Amarillo Design Bureau. Amarillo Design Bureau. Amarillo Design Bureau. You might be thinking, are these really the worst errors that Jordan Sorcery has made? Just mixing up a couple of names, getting some dates wrong, simple stuff like that. Surely there is something more explosive that undermines a point or ruins an entire video. He must have made bigger factual errors that are enormous. Well, no, I haven't. They are the most serious ones I've made, and even if you were to go back and watch every single one of my videos from this year, and to watch them all the way through, and to leave comments, and to like them, and to be really positive about them, and to maybe do that more than once, you won't even find a single mistake. So don't bother doing that. Don't go back and watch all of them start to finish. Don't. So now that we've looked back and agreed never to call me out on my mistakes again, why don't we take a look forward at what I'm going to be doing next? Although there is just something I want to say before we get into that. I want to thank everybody who has viewed, liked, commented, shared, and supported my work over the course of this year. It really is incredibly humbling and gratifying to see people really engage with what I've been doing here on the channel. It makes it all feel really worthwhile. In about mid-2023, I had to walk away from what had become quite a toxic work environment. I made a really tough call, what was quite difficult at the time, and I really think that I was only able to make that decision because of this creative outlet, because I was enjoying doing this so much. And this has genuinely, YouTube and the videos and the community that I've been building here has really helped me through what has been quite a difficult year. And I just want to thank you all for that. Right now, I am working on the channel full time. I'm making as much quality, rigorously researched history stuff as I can, doing interviews with people that I think are important and have some interesting, important stories to share, and just having loads of fun working in this space. But it's just not, unfortunately, financially viable to do that for the long term. So at some point, I'm going to have to make that decision about scaling back on the amount of time I spend on this work and going back to a sort of more traditional job, I guess. So that time will come. I'm going to keep doing this for as long as I can afford to do this. So hopefully it's not anytime soon, but I'm just putting that out there that this, unfortunately, because of the way our world works and the economy that we live in, it's just a fact of life. If you want to support me in pushing further back that timeline and making it possible for me to continue to do this work full time for longer, then you can feel free to join my Patreon, or you can donate via Ko-Fi or Ko-fi. I've put links in the description below. I'm just called @JordanSorcery on those and pretty much all social media. There is no obligation. I'm not forcing anybody to do this or holding your feet to the fire or anything like that. I completely understand that many people are not in a position to do that kind of thing, to support in that way. So I really appreciate all of the views and the likes and sharing, talking about my work and sharing my work more widely is incredibly helpful as well. That's really, really important. And if you like my stuff, then doing that really helps me too. So please consider doing that. Please consider following me on other social media platforms, because that helps me spread my word more widely and get more views from other people and brings people into the community. But if you are able to and are interested in supporting me and supporting the work financially, then you can do that. Patreon, Ko-Fi. I can't thank you enough. It helps me just make this stuff and do this work, which I would love to do more of. And hopefully you guys would love to see me continue doing for longer. But that's the end of my self-promotion spiel. I know it's awkward, I know it's horrible, and I'm really not trying to guilt trip anybody or put anybody in an awkward position. Only do it if you can afford to and if you want to. But I do just want to be honest about where I'm at with the channel and what I'm going to be looking to do over the course of 2024. And that's because I've got loads of big plans for 2024. I really want to be here making videos week in, week out, interviewing people, doing the book club, all of this cool stuff for the rest of 2024 and beyond. And hopefully there is enough runway for me to do that. So hopefully this will cheer you up after that bit of grotty self-promotion. We have got the month of Christmas coming up, or as some of you will celebrate, Monstill. So what have I put in the Monstill stocking for you? Well, I think these are some very, very cool presents. I have got interviews with key, just foundational, important legends in the Games Workshop story coming up. I'm going to be interviewing Ian Livingstone, Sir Ian Livingstone, the co-founder of Games Workshop, and Rick Priestley, the co-creator of Warhammer and the creator of 40k. Both of those interviews will drop on the channel in December, so you'll be able to see those conversations. I think they're fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to sharing those with you. I've also got plenty of other interviews with Games Workshop luminaries and designers and business leaders and people from further afield than GW who have had connections to the worlds of Warhammer and 40k and the development of those spaces and those games. All of those interviews are coming up over the next couple of months. I'm looking forward to sharing those conversations, and as ever, I will be taking things I learned from those interviews and placing them into context in my history videos that I'm still working on. I've got some real good ones coming up. I'm excited. One of which is Warhammer 7th edition. The making of series continues. I'm going to be sharing this in December, so you'll be able to continue that story as we move past the 6th edition and what most people consider to be one of the peaks of Warhammer's history into an edition that starts to change things and starts to evolve in a way that's maybe not quite as popular and is perhaps leading to some unfortunate futures. But this edition, it's been an interesting one to write. I've done a lot of work and research on this one and really tried to get into the story, but it's been tough. It's been a challenge, and that's why it's taken a bit of time. But going into next year, I'm going to be doing 2 more videos in the making of Warhammer Fantasy series. One of them is going to be on the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and one of them is going to be on the end times. And I'm going to separate those two to give them both the time and the space to cover them in the right way. They are such major events, the creation of that 8th edition and the changes that came with it, the final attempts to save the Warhammer world, and then the end of the Warhammer world and how things played out in just cancelling an entire universe. So those 2 videos are going to come early next year, and following those, I will be doing a series on the making of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Very excited to look at that in detail and see how that influenced the creation of the Warhammer world as we understand it. There is also probably going to be a couple of time skips here and there in my making of series, so keep an eye out because I think we might get a couple of surprises as well. Normally, once a month, I live stream with my Patreons for an exclusive GW Books Club conversation. We get together and we discuss the latest in our book series, the first 17 of the GW books that we're reading in release order. We're actually going to be taking a break in December. We're going on hiatus. We're going to return in January with Conrad by David Ferring. And that means that I've got some live stream time available in December, which I'm going to use for this. And this is going to be as embarrassing, if not more embarrassing, than me going through my top 5 mistakes of the year, because this is a puzzle quest book written by Steve Jackson. It's one of 2. The other was the Cascade of Souls by Ian Livingstone, but this is the first one, and this is an impossible puzzle. Basically, every single page in here has a gorgeous piece of full colour, full page art by Stephen Lavis, and within that art, there is a puzzle. Which puzzle? What puzzle? What are you supposed to solve? That is up to you to work out, and then you've got to solve it. I'm going to be trying to do that live, on camera, on stream, for a few hours on December 17th, Sunday, December 17th. So if you want to come and just help me decipher all of the puzzles in here, no spoilers, but we can maybe work it out together, hopefully, because I think this is really going to stump me. It's an expansion of the Fighting Fantasy series. It's a spin-off, but it's nails. So I don't think it's going to go well, but it's public stream, open to everybody. I will be sharing more details closer to the time, but put it in your calendars, Sunday, December 17th. But that is not all that I've got planned for December, because I've also got some sillier, trivial, frothy videos about Warhammer and about the Warhammer world, a few surprises, stuff like more Warhammer movies, and a ghost story for Christmas set in the Warhammer world. So I'll be sharing all of that in the coming weeks. Going into next year, I've got loads of exciting plans for history videos and some really fun stuff that you might not expect, but that is for 2024. For now, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. I am Jordan, I am Jordan, I am Jordan, I am Jordan, and this, and this, and this, and this is Jordan Sorcery. So I launched the channel with a video about every single Citadel cat miniature, at least the ones that I could find, and the addendum for that was as long as the video itself almost, because I missed loads. Turns out, Citadel have made loads of cats over the years, and trying to document them all was a fool's errand. I thought I was going to do the same thing for dogs this year, all of the Citadel dogs, but I just decided that that's too much, that's too big a challenge. I wimped out and I did not do it. But I have done a short, my favourite Citadel dogs, and you can see that very soon here on the channel.